For the cheerleading group, we're going to argue that cheerleading is a sport, and we're going to start off with talking about a cheerleader's day-to-day schedule.
Okay, so cheerleading requires a lot of training, and a lot of requirements include strength, endurance, flexibility, and technical skills. And they have to be able to do tumbles and throwing skills and being able to hold each other up and push each other in their stunts. And so these cheerleaders are having to do like a lot of repetitive movements and intense flips and stunts. So they're having to go through a lot of training that takes the whole year long. And so there's 2 phases when it comes to their conditioning and their performance. And so for 8 months, there's a conditioning phase, and there's 3 stages in this, and there's an off-season stage, stage 1 preseason, and stage 2 preseason. And so stage 1 preseason, like a typical week is they get 3 rest days, and then the rest of the days consist of weights, jump roping, and ab workouts, sprints, stuff like that, like really intense. And that's even just in preseason. So that's just like a typical week for them. And then the performance phase lasts about 4 months, and there's 2 phases of this, and it's the high impact season and the peak season. And then high impact season, they practice every single day basically. And so a typical week that looks like them for a week is on Monday they have a 3-hour practice, then they have conditioning afterwards, and then Tuesday they typically have a basketball game that they have to show up an hour early to warm up. And then Wednesday they have a 3-hour practice, then conditioning again, and then Thursday another basketball game, and then show up an hour early to warm up, plus the game itself. And then Friday they also have another 3-hour practice, then conditioning. Saturday they typically have a performance, and then Sunday they have a 3-hour practice, then conditioning. So as you can tell, it's very intense, and they have to practice every single day just to be prepared for their performance.
Just going off on that, I actually had the opportunity to actually interview cheerleaders that are from Ball State and IU, and they literally said the exact same thing. Like they have practices, not to mention as well, they have to do training, and then in addition to that, they have to do additional things. So they have to do like volunteer events, like such as like for Ball State, they do like dance marathon. And sometimes they say this can be like a hardship, especially with their like mental and emotional, because it can take a lot of toll on like their body and mind, especially like having to push themselves, especially when it's around like nationals time, because they have to like literally work out every day for hours during like all break with only like a couple days off. And it just gets hard and like almost sometimes emotional because they can't go home and like see their families, and like it's kind of hard to like sometimes get their composure and things back together.
So one part that I want to talk about is kind of like how intense that like cheerleading has become. So it's become so competitive in that they are risking like their bodies to do all these stunts, and they are actually super reliant on their teammates just to catch them. Like they do, they get thrown up in the air like 20 to 35 feet in the air on hardwood floor. So they're really like putting all their trust in their teammates, and like for them to never like drop somebody is really rare. Like it happens and like people mess up. So my article was kind of discussing the injuries and athletic training that they go through, and the stat says in the American Journal of Sports Medicine that the most common stunts performed of 29 injuries were 9 pyramids and 8 involved the basket toss, and over 29 injuries, 17 were severe head injuries and resulting in 13 skull fractures and 2 deaths, and 8 were cervical fractures. So if you can imagine, even like playing, for me, I play volleyball. If one person messes up, that's no big deal. But if one person messes up in cheerleading, you can see where that can be a huge risk factor, and just like these girls can suffer like major concussions, and that can put a huge hindrance on like just like their season in general. Like if they're losing people to just mistakes and errors, like that will totally like affect their play. And even breaking bones, like if they fall or twist their ankle, they'll be out for like months at a time. So like these injuries aren't lighthearted. It's not just a little ankle sprain or anything. Like they'll be out for a while. brain injuries is also another area where it's really concerning, like almost compared to football. So these injuries are really similar to other like sports that are considered NCAA and very popular, and I just strongly believe that they're putting their bodies on the line just like any other sport.
And going off of that, that's what they like mentioned with their requirements and skills. They were like, it's more difficult, more dangerous in legal and high competitive teams because most average like high schoolers, they're just doing like an extension or just like a high, like barely raised up. But they're like having to flip in the air and like their experiences to like ensure and make sure everyone's safe. So it's not even just their own individual that they have to like make sure, oh, like I gotta stay in shape and everything. It's also the people around them, and they have to like always keep on working and improving that. So like they're developing a good skill that will help it year round. So like they're all staying like in a good stance.
Right. And even like because it's getting more competitive, it used to be more sideline stuff. Because it's getting more competitive, they're like risking their lives and stuff.
To bounce off both of you guys, like I said, my sister was a cheerleader in high school and had to quit because of the soft spot on her head because the flyer fell on her twice and like gave her 2 concussions. So like even in high school, like even though they're not going high up, like even that fall can like really hurt somebody physically and mentally. So. Are you done? Okay, so bouncing off of that as well, my article really talked about how even sideline cheerleading and like the elite competitive, like all-star cheering, like they've kind of like meshed together. All-star cheerleading has definitely like kind of taken over just like what cheerleading includes. So they've got to not just do cheers, they've got to do flips and acrobatics and stunts and these like real and extensive training. And all of these like faced with challenges with like mental and physical health being on the line, and they've got to take extensive training courses with choreography and athleticism. Like they can't have 2 left feet. They've got to be able to keep up with everybody. And Title IX has begun to accept cheerleading as a varsity sport, which started at the University of Maryland back in early 2000, and they're changing the face of cheerleading where it's not just a USA sport, it's an international sport. So they're competing all over the world, and they're not just doing like the pom-poms and megaphones, they're doing these extensive flips that take a long time to perfect and are very dangerous if they were to step out and twist their ankle or something like that. They could easily snap their Achilles or tear their ACL or something like that to go along. Did anybody talk about competitions in the surveys that we have?
Yeah, so especially our IU girl, she mentioned that she's done like 2 national titles with IU as well as 1 world title for the US national team, which is pretty awesome in my opinion, because these girls, like literally they all said that they have been doing cheerleading since they're like 3 years old. Like they've been practicing for like 15, like almost 20 years. And just to put that much time and like flips and stress on your body can be a lot, but I think it's really helped their like personal development. As they like mentioned, they were all like, oh, it's helped me like work with others, being responsible, driven, like motivation, and like especially time management is one of the key ones, because it's not just like, oh, they just go to games. Like they have to work out, they have to cheer and like do nationals and like other volunteer things. Because even the one girl mentioned that she was a full-time teacher, a master's student, and a college cheerleader, which I think is crazy. And it just gives them plenty of opportunities to like stay in shape, but it also increases the possibility of like getting injuries over the years and stuff.
I think the biggest thing that we can conclude is that people say that football made them a better man and a better person overall, and I feel like cheerleading has done the same thing for women and men all over the world.
Yeah. Nice. Way to conclude that.
Thank you.